Morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We are learning Mishnah Shabbos, Perek Yutes, chapter 19, Mishnah Gimel, Mishnah 3. I'd like to dedicate this morning's learning in memory of my mother, Mrs. Shalamis Rabinowitz, Seich Nishmas Shalamis Bas Rabbi Yaakov Eliezer. All right. Continuing with the discussion of a bris on Shabbos. Now, the Mishnah is going to start with something that we're not very familiar with. Marchitzen es hakatan. We can bathe the child, bein lefnei hamila, whether it's before the bris is done, or bein la'achar hamila, whether it's after the bris is done. Now, in the times of the Mishnah, there was a they believed, and this doesn't exist anymore. But it was believed that that if the child was not bathed in warm water before the bris or after the bris, it was dangerous for the child. Bathing the child in warm water before the bris gave it the strength to be able to withstand the bris, and afterwards it helped it heal. And it was considered a very important need for the child. And therefore, the Mishnah says that although we typically cannot bathe our whole bodies in hot water on Shabbos, the halacha is for this child, before the bris milah and after bris milah, you may, because it's a question of, the child's life can be in danger. It's going to be in danger otherwise. Now, again, it's brought down in Shulchan Aruch that this situation that a child needs to be bathed before the bris milah or after, that this doesn't exist anymore. It's not something that's part of the nature of things. Mm-hmm. But it seemed to have been that way in the times of the Mishnah. Mm-hmm. So because of the fact that it was so essential for the child's safety that it was to be done, so the Tana Kama says we can bathe the child whether before or after the bris milah in the warm water. Now, typically, we may not bathe in hot water on Shabbos, our whole body in hot or warm water on Shabbos. Actually, we had this a while ago, and that is because in the times of the Mishnah, where do you take a bath? In a bathhouse, and there are people in charge of the bathhouse to keep it warm. And the concern was that people would bathe on Shabbos, that the people in charge of heating up the bathhouse would do it on Shabbos. That was the concern, and therefore the sages decreed no bathing in warm hot water on Shabbos. Now that's not going to be an issue for the child, and the reason it's not going to be an issue for the child is because of the fact that let's back up for a second. Now, that's why we can't bathe in hot water. Now, being that here we're doing this for the child's safety, it's not an issue. Now, what's interesting is that this is the way they say it here. Let me read it to you over here. The question really revolves around, let's say, forget about bathing the child, okay? How about if you don't have hot water? You don't even have the water necessary. Can you heat up the water on Shabbos? Is it considered that much of a need to heat it up on Shabbos? So if we're talking about after the bris, then you could. After the bris, right, where the child has had a bris milah, that's when the child is in danger. Yeah. And if you would need to, you could even heat up the water on Shabbos. Mm-hmm. Okay. But before the bris, you can't do that. Now, before the bris, the child's not in danger, right? Now, for some reason, it doesn't seem the issue of bathing the child before the bris doesn't seem to be. I don't know why it's not to prevent the danger, but this is the way they explain it. Before the circumcision, however, the child is not yet in any danger. The reason it's permitted to wash him is because the usual prohibition against bathing on Shabbos does not apply in this case. The rabbis prohibited bathing with warm water because they were afraid that bathhouse attendants would heat water on Shabbos. Since a baby would never be bathed in a bathhouse before a circumcision, the rabbis permitted washing him in warm water. However, since the child is not in any danger, it's forbidden to heat water on Shabbos for this purpose. If one forgot to heat water before Shabbos, circumcision would have to be postponed.
Wow, that
bad.
Wow.
It has to be postponed. Now, that's why I don't understand if this is such an important need for the child, right, that you're going to postpone the bris if you don't have the hot water. It would seem to me that we're trying to prevent danger to life.
Yeah.
And for some reason, that doesn't seem to be, again, maybe I'm just making a big mistake, but I would have thought that, that would have been enough of a reason to allow everything. But apparently it's not that way. Apparently, beforehand, again, it's there to strengthen the child. It's there definitely to help the child, but it doesn't seem to be so essential. It doesn't seem to be as essential as after the bris milah. So therefore, what's the reason why we allow you to bathe the child beforehand? The answer is because, in fact, again, it just seems it just struck me now. It just seems so strange, but the way they're saying it is because the reason why there's no danger now to bathe the child is because bathing is a rabbinic prohibition. And the rabbis didn't make the prohibition here because the whole reason for the prohibition wouldn't even start here by this child, and therefore they didn't apply it to a child before the bris milah. But and therefore, since right now the child's not in danger, therefore you can't heat up the water. But if you don't have the hot water, he'd bring down here that the bris is going to be postponed. It's such an important need that you're going to postpone the bris without it. But on the other hand, it's not considered enough a need to say, well, in order to prevent that danger to life, because that's what it seems to be, unless it's something in between. It's not a full danger to life, but it's enough to postpone it. I mean, if you're postponing it because it's dangerous. Otherwise, I would assume. And I would have thought that's enough of a reason to permit the whole thing to begin with. That's not the way they bring it down here. They bring it down that since at this point, right now, the child is not in danger, so we allow the rabbinic prohibition of bathing to be, the rabbis didn't apply the rabbinic prohibition of bathing at this point of time, but to heat up the water, that you will not be able to do. Okay, so we have the Tanna Kama saying that you can bathe this child before the bris milah or after. However, this has to be qualified. Umezalfin alav biyad avolei b'kli. We're not really going to bathe him regularly. We're going to sprinkle water on him. And we're not going to sprinkle water with a utensil, which would be the normal way to sprinkle water on someone or something. You're going to do it by hand. And that's enough. That's enough for what you need to take care of this kid before the bris milah. So we're going to sprinkle him all over the place, all over his body, which would be halachically the equivalent of bathing him, if not for the fact that, because of the bris milah, you're allowed to do that. But nonetheless, according to the Tanna Kama, you have to do it with a shinui. Got to do it in an unusual manner. First of all, you're not going to do a regular bath, and you're not even going to sprinkle the water in a regular way. That's Tanna Kama's opinion. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah Omer, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah said, you can bathe a child when the third day after the bris falls out on Shabbos, because the third day after the bris is considered still a dangerous time for the child, because on the third day after bris milah, there's still a lot of pain. How do we know that? Shenama, as the pasuk says, this is talking about the story by Shechem, where the brothers convinced Shechem and his father to tell everyone in the city to have a bris milah. And on the third day after the bris milah, and when the Torah says they were in pain and therefore too weak to fight back, or too weak to really fight, that's when Shimon and Levi attacked. So you see that the third day after the bris milah, there's still a lot of pain, and that's going to weaken the child. So that means the child is in a state of danger. So Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says we can wash the child basically even on the third day. So the point, according to Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, is you bathe him regularly. You don't sprinkle, you bathe. You're allowed to regularly bathe the child. You do that before the bris. Now you can do that even on the third day after the bris. If you can do that after the third day after the bris, you therefore certainly can do it before the bris. You can do it after the bris. I don't know if it's certainly about before, but according to Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, you can do it before, you can do it after, you can even do it on the third day after. And you can go ahead and do it. You can bathe him regularly. You can go ahead and bathe in the warm water. Not only that, according to Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, you can even heat up the water for that purpose. And when we say that the third day is that you could bathe him on the third day, but if it's Shabbos, you can bathe him on the second day also, because if the third day is rough going, the second day is also for sure going to be rough going. So therefore, it's not only the third day; it's even up to the third day. If any of those days would be Shabbos, you'd be able to go ahead and bathe him because of the fact that we see from the Torah the third day there's still a lot of pain, it weakens, and therefore the child could be bathed even on that day. Then the Mishnah concludes. Safek va'androginus. Safek means a questionable child. What's questionable mean? So in the times of the Mishnah, It's very interesting, these differences in the ways of nature. But in the times of the Mishnah, if a child was born in the 8th month of pregnancy, it was a goner. Wasn't going to last. Wasn't going to live. That was just the way it was. 8th month, the child born in the 7th month or the 9th month, fine. 8th month, goner. That's not going to last. So much so that you don't even have a mitzvah to give it a bris milah. Now, in this case, it's a suffix. We don't know. Is it from the 8th month, from the 9th month? We don't know if it's a child that's going to last or not. So we have a whole suffix if we have a mitzvah to give it a bris milah. Next case, androgynous. An androgynous is how do you read this? Hermaphrodite. Okay, hermaphrodite. That means born.
Herman.
What?
Someone by the name of Herman.
So, all right. Someone born, and an androgynous is someone that was born with both male and female organs. Now, this child also, does such a child need a bris? It's got a male organ, does need a bris. The question really is, what is this child considered? Is it considered a male or a female? And because it's a doubt as to what, halachically, it's a doubt what it's considered. So this is also another case where we don't know if the child really needs a bris milah. So for any of these children that it's a question whether we have a mitzvah here, a bris milah or not, ein machalin labas Shabbos. I can desecrate Shabbos for him. Because if there is no mitzvah bris milah here, you desecrated Shabbos. Rabbi Yehuda matir androgynous. Rabbi Yehuda permits a bris milah on Shabbos for an androgynous. Why is that? So the Bartuner explains that what's happening here between Rabbi Yehuda and the Tanna Kama is a question of psukim. There are verses in the Torah, and the question is basically which drasha. Each one has his drasha, his source from the Torah to support his opinion. So, for instance, Rabbi Yehuda says androgynous needs a bris milah. Does that mean that we determined he holds an androgynous as a male? The answer is no. It says not necessarily. He may have a doubt as to what status his child has. Nonetheless, the pasuk says, "Hima lachem kol zachar." Circumcise for yourselves any male. So he learns from there, any male means that anyone that has a male organ has a mitzvah bris milah. To make a difference what their status is. If it has the zakris, if it has the male organ, then it needs a bris milah. That's what he derives from the Torah. The Tanna Kama, for whatever reason, doesn't follow that source, and he has his own source. He has a source that the pasuk says, "Yimol basar arlasai," his foreskin shall be circumcised, and he learns from there that applies only someone that only has a foreskin, it gets a bris milah. But if they have besides a foreskin, besides the male organ, the female organ, they are exempt from bris milah. So the argument here is not so much as to the status of the androgynous in a general sense, whatever else it would be relevant for, whether it's a male or a female. But here specifically by bris milah, it's a question how we interpret the words of the Torah to say that such a child has a bris milah, no matter what it is, or we don't. And therefore, if we don't have that source, we're left with a suffix, a doubt. Is the child a male or a female? Because it's a doubt whether it needs a bris milah or not, you can't do the bris milah on Shabbos. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Rabbi.